good afternoon, good morning. I'm Andrew Meyers, Director of Global Coldchain Solutions, and I'd like to welcome you all to the event. Obviously, there's been a couple of defining moments in history recently. The COVID pandemic highlighted the risks and the weaknesses in our global supply chain. Twice prior, there were major interruptions to the supply chain with the Iceland volcano eruptions. However, these were quickly forgotten and the supply chain returned to previous practices without change and risk. This time, it's very different. The length and the depth of the pandemic and the interruptions highlighted the vulnerability and it heavily impacted companies' sales costs and marketing. Now, the word from the boardrooms is the impact can never happen again. We need to redesign our supply chain. And the second comment I hear is we don't know what that looks like, but we need to redesign so that we don't have this issue again and have our supply chains interrupted with such devastating consequences. There is a lot of drivers for change at the moment. Certainly after people have come back after COVID, there is a belief that global warming has heavily contributed to the pandemic, whether that's a fair assessment or not. That's many believe that that is the case. And of course, there are potentially more pandemics to come. There's some of the reports suggest that there's at least 24, 25 known viruses that we don't have cures for. The other drivers for change is obviously with 2 years of pretty much hibernation from the industry, there was a lot of time and a lot of projects got put on hold. Just prior to COVID, there was a lot of increased pressure on compliance, qualification, reliability, and obviously, in the pharma industry, they wanted to ensure that their supply chain was qualified end to end, and they had minimized their risks to the lowest level. Since it did go on hold for a couple of years and possibly a bit longer, now that people have returned to their offices, returned to normal sort of work, those issues are coming up again quite rapidly, and they are wanting to sort of regain some of that ground in terms of qualification and quality. So there's a lot of pressure, a lot more pressure now on audits than we've seen in the past. Throughout the interruption in the supply chain, obviously there was a lot of shelf space lost, and that resulted in lost revenue for companies as well. So this is one of the reasons they say this cannot happen again. Obviously, one of the side effects or the impacts of COVID was the high cost of delivery, and that significantly increased costs in the supply chain. So there's a real move at the moment to reassess the supply chains. They're looking to recover some of those costs, or at least ensure that they have the most cost-effective and efficient supply chains. And again, the interruptions to the supply chain or the high cost reduce their profits, and nobody likes lower profits, whether you're a shareholder or a company director. And also during the pandemic, there was a shortage of supply chain equipment, not just flights, but when the flights started opening up, there was shortages of equipment, and there was very high cost to relocate much of that supply chain equipment. But these are all known things that we're all aware of. But of course, they are the big drivers for the change that we're seeing now. So what we're seeing on a major front at the moment is all major companies are heavily focused on reducing their carbon footprint. Sustainability is the word at the moment, and it's a high priority of most of the pharma industry at this point. And they're certainly wanting to force changes. They're looking for more sustainable supply chain solutions. However, as to be expected, they're certainly want the improvements, want the change, but without extra cost. So that's the challenge for the industry, as to how do you achieve these goals without the extra costs. There's a lot of movement in the industry at the moment in various directions. It's not just all in one way, but certainly, reusable solutions are very high on the priority list, and recyclable solutions, and that can mean both passive and active solutions. And certainly, sustainable solutions is a high priority. But there is a big but with that only where there's cost reductions are they looking, to change to those sorts of solutions. There's a big focus on reducing weight of equipment and packaging, and certainly fuel consumptions as well. However, you've got to look at the other side of that as well, that they don't want to forego the quality or the risk, or increase their risk by reducing those the options of what they're currently using. Big focus, as I was saying, on green, environmentally sustainable solutions, and pretty much all companies are being pushed in this direction, which personally I support and believe, and we're doing a lot of work ourselves in this area, and expect to be launching some big things in the very near future. So what are the cost drivers? There's obviously a targeted focused on reducing the costs. We all know that, and unfortunately, in today's world, post-pandemic, the costs of manufacturing and everything seem to be going the other way. But it's a delicate situation that we're all going to have to try to manage. Reusability. Where there can be some savings and reduce costs on reusability, the industry is happy to look at those solutions. As I was saying before, reducing gross weights, reducing cubics are all processes that the clients are looking to innovate ways of trying to reduce their cost. Certainly, it's been before the pandemic. There was a big push by companies to reduce the number of suppliers, particularly where you've got auditing and compliance costs. There was a period where they wouldn't put on new suppliers. What we're seeing at the moment is that unless there's some good savings to be had and some innovation, there's not a lot of new suppliers being put on the books. There seems to be more pressure to place pressure on the existing suppliers to come up with innovation and reduce their costs. There's certainly a focus on better quality solutions throughout the pandemic. The amount of excursions and waste, mostly through traffic delays and things, was very, very high. So there is a big focus on looking for better quality solutions to reduce excursions. There's certainly more and more emphasis on qualification data. So we all need to make sure that we've got all of those processes in place. The other thing that was interesting was that's coming out of it, the questions are, how did you perform through COVID? What were your challenges? How did you deal with those challenges? How were you able to cope with those challenges? So we're finding there's a lot more in-depth questioning and a lot more challenging of our processes and our reliability as a company as well. And that's not just our company. I think it's all companies are being put under the microscope. What's new? Certainly the companies are employing a lot of sustainability staff, have sustainability departments, and they are taking a lead on a lot of the new projects and things. These people have a high degree of expertise and knowledge, so they're really pushing the green sustainability angle. We've been to a couple of meetings recently about greenwashing, and that's where companies, some of the companies are taking a very strong line where companies are pretending to be green, but they don't have the supporting evidence. So they're calling it greenwashing, and we're finding that they're drilling down to make sure that what you're saying is actual fact and you have data and evidence to support it. Biodegradable solutions are a big talking point at the moment, but there's also a bit of pushback on microplastics, and we're seeing, increasingly that question being asked, and increasingly it's an unacceptable solution to the sustainability, which I tend to agree with that. We're seeing microplastics in fish from rivers and streams and in our oceans from dumping plastic. And my point of view is I think microplastic will eventually end up in the water table and we'll be drinking it. So 20, 30 years time, we might have all sorts of challenges with our health if we're drinking water full of microplastics. Certainly companies are looking for innovation. They are ready to change, but you have to be able to fully back it up and demonstrate all of those previous topics that I mentioned. There is a lot of talk about redesigning the supply chain. Just before COVID, there was a lot of offshoring, rationalizing manufacturing sites, global supply. But we're seeing a lot of talk at the moment about more onshoring to reduce the risk of out of supply. So there is a lot of talk in the background about redesigning their supply chains. They don't know what that looks like, but there's certainly a lot of talk and planning and discussion in the background on how to minimize the risk of ever having those same problems again. What we are seeing is there's a tend to just want global suppliers, those who can deliver from multiple sites, and they're wanting uniformity and the same quality across all sites, and that I can see from a quality point of view is very beneficial to them. So that's, I suppose, a positive going forward. Certainly innovation, there's a lot of questions and a lot of talk about they want change, but they want to move away from traditional practices, past products and processes. They're looking for change, not just in products, but also processes. They're looking for some more creative thinking. I often hear, well, we have this supplier and this supplier, but they're exactly the same. There's no difference. There's no innovation coming from your industry. So that's certainly a process and an opportunity, I think, for change. So to survive the future, how do we see the future unfolding and how to survive in the future? Certainly, companies have to be more creative, more innovative. You need to come up with new ideas, looking at existing processes and looking how you can redevelop, redefine, or make them more efficient. We're finding that collaboration, although it's been talked about a lot, often doesn't happen. But we're seeing certainly a lot more collaboration, and not just with individual suppliers through the supply chain, a lot more collaboration with all the actors or suppliers and touch points in the supply chain. So there's more work being done on that front as well. Certainly there's a high focus on the new projects after COVID, and there's a push for a very high success rate on those. Global footprint, I think in this, from what we see going forward, if you don't have seamless supply through the major markets, it's going to be very hard to be involved in the industry. They're certainly wanting more global uniform systems. They're wanting the same systems, reliability across the market. Not to say that there isn't different systems for different purposes, but where they've got the same products, the same requirements traveling through their global supply chains, they're wanting uniformity. Risk, obviously after the COVID, they want demonstrable risk. You must be able to prove that you can manage your risk and have it tested and that the backups are in place. Sustainable, again, greenwashing they're talking about. You must have supporting evidence. You must be able to demonstrate that you've got those policies, products, procedures in place. And the same goes for the policies and the operations. They're looking for cost-effective return and recycling programs. They want companies that have got some longevity with a proven track record. But having said that, they're looking for innovation, and I often hear from the logistics industry, they're all offering the same. There is no difference, so we have no reason to change. So I think the message there is if you're looking to secure more business, you certainly must be prepared to have a different offering and not just be a Me Too company. Certainly they're wanting multiple solutions. 2 to 3 seems to be the normal. They're limiting it to that. Critical action plans, they must be tested and proven. And certainly, the global supply is an important thing. What you can expect is much, much more detailed audits. The audits are far more critical, more in depth, and they're digging much deeper. They're certainly longer, where it was often, in our part of the supply chain, a full day was pretty common. We're now, receiving bookings for 2 and 3 days, and they're digging into the documented evidence right to the lowest levels. So we're seeing a lot of change in that area. So I suppose, look, we did survive through all of this. We actually grew a lot through this last period, and I'm pleased to say we delivered on every single order from every single factory on time. So whether we were the lucky ones or whether we just had good processes and management in place, it's probably open for discussion. I like to think the latter. But what I think was very, very beneficial from our point, we just didn't have, and we still don't have, the temperature excursions. They're very rare, and I think the reliability certainly has helped us a lot meet or exceed those challenges. We're always innovating. We're always offering new solutions. We understand the problems. We don't just look at it from our point of view. We look at it from all players in the market. Anybody that's touching the product or got a touch point, we like to understand what they're doing. So certainly collaboration has been a big factor in our ability to meet those challenges. Sustainability, as I said, we've been, had a recycling program in place for more than 10 years, so it's not new for us, but, we're having to revisit it, relook at it, and make sure we're accounting for it all properly. Our waste policy, we certainly continuously look at ways of reducing our waste, innovative ways of basically reducing all of our costs, and we've been very successful in that. Our risk mitigation is very successful. We have 100% backup at every site, generators as well. So from a supply chain point of view, we meet all the GMP standards, not just the GDP that everybody thinks is a much lower standard. It's not. GDP is just a subsection of GMP, so it's got all the same requirements. I think one of the things that was very important through the COVID, our integrated internal supply chain was very powerful, because we were able to manage all of our products through our own internal supply chains, and of course that was huge benefits because we always had the raw materials and the products available. So that was very powerful for us, and it was certainly something that allowed us to deliver from every site, every order on time. In terms of innovations, certainly, I think combining active and passive solutions, there's no one solution for the market. We all wish there was, but it's not that simple. We all know the idiosyncrasies of logistics and global supply chain. But I think there's certainly a lot of innovation from our side by combining both solutions, and that's, I think, certainly going to take us into the future. I think the important part is we don't cut corners. We don't sacrifice quality. As soon as you start sacrificing quality, try to cut some corners, you generally end up with excursions and problems that create a bad reputation. So, my advice is, do it once, do it properly. We have a saying here: measure twice, cut once, and we live by that code. I think it's always a delicate balance from a business point of view, trying to combine quality, performance, and be globally competitive. That's always a challenge for all businesses. We're able to achieve that by continuously, looking at our processes, our the way we do things, where there's some inefficiencies creep in over time. We're revisiting those to make sure we take them out of our process. So they've been, some of the things that we've used through the last couple of years, and I think that's what's going to drive our business into the future. Our best practices, we do innovate. We're always innovating. As I was saying before, we design for every part of the supply chain. We look at what are the logistics people's challenges. What equipment do they have? How can we better utilize their time? With the freight forwarders, the same thing. What can we do to make their job easier? Is there a way we can have less touch points? So we look at all of these things as part of our best practices. And I think, variety, we've been very successful with, our offering to the market, because we treat every customer as a unique opportunity. It gives us a lot of flexibility. Our production at this stage is about 60% of our production is customized for the client. And where we've customized, it's offering them, lots of efficiencies and better payloads. So in past projects, just by small changes, we've been able to increase payloads by sometimes up to 200%. So we've become very, very good at that process, and it certainly is an advantage to the clients. So that's just some of the ways that our best practices have helped us get through. But that can apply to every actor in the supply chain. Just look at it as a process and look at how you can change. So these are just a few of the companies that we deal with, and we're very pleased to be able to have supported them for many, many years. So thank you for your time, and I'll open it up for any questions. I think at this point in time I should be connected with you somehow on Teams or Zoom. So if there's any questions, I'd be pleased to answer them. And thank you for your time.